Hi, this is Mr. Malay, and here's your video review for your upcoming quiz in AP US history over imperialism. You'd be able to match the following people to what they were famous for. Admiral Dewey, remember, he was the commander of all ships in the Pacific and won the Battle of Manila Bay. William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, you need to know that they were the people that started yellow journalism. Pulitzer and Hearst were each other's greatest rivals. Hearst ran the New York Journal, and Pulitzer ran the New York World. You need to know who William Gorgas was. He was the main, or he was the doctor that helped stop the spread of yellow fever so they could finish the Panama Canal. You need to know who William Jennings Bryan is, and he's a guy who ran for president a bunch of times and never won. He ran against McKinley. George Goethals was the main engineer for the Panama Canal. You need to know who Delhomme was. He was the ambassador to Cuba, or sorry, to Washington, D.C., that wrote the letter that was very antagonistic against President McKinley. And Emilio Aguinaldo, who was leader of the Filipino rebels. You need to know what happened to the battleship Maine and how it led to the Spanish-American War. You also need to know how yellow journalism led to the Spanish-American War, with them reporting stories about Spanish cruelty and speculating that the Spanish blew up the Maine when there's no evidence that they did. You need to be able to tell me about the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay, where we just destroyed every ship. We didn't lose any Americans, only lost one American, and that was due to heat stroke. And we destroyed every one of their ships because we could fire farther away. We had better artillery, better guns, and everything else. Better ships. You need to know some of the problems that was faced by the Americans in the Spanish-American War. We talked about the bad beef. We talked about the yellow fever, the malaria, sickness from drinking the water, the heavy wool uniforms in the summer. Any of those would work. You need to be able to tell me about why they called it the Splendid Little War, because it was so quick and easy for us. You need to know who the Rough Riders were. That was Teddy Roosevelt's troop. You need to tell me what dollar diplomacy is, and that's trying to spread American ideals through economy and loans. You need to be able to tell me about moral diplomacy, and that is spread American ideals through our morality instead of our military. You need to know what Roosevelt's big stick philosophy was. We had our right to interfere with Latin America whenever we needed to, and speak softly, carry a big stick. That was Roosevelt's corollary. You need to know what the white man's burden was. You need to know what yellow journalism was. You need to know what the reconcentration was, and those were concentration camps in Cuba. You need to be able to tell me what a scorched earth policy is, and that was basically where they burnt anything that their opponent might use valuable, like what they did in Cuban rebels did in Cuba. You know what the Teller Amendment said, which was basically a bill that said we would not try to annex Cuba. You need to know that the Hey Bueno Varela Treaty allowed us to create the Panama Canal. You know, Latin America is basically any country in Middle and South America. Panama was eventually controlled by Colombia and then broke away. You know that jingoism is extreme pride in your country. I mean, even belligerent defense of your country. The Treaty of Paris ended the Spanish-American War. Manifest destiny is the belief the United States should spread out. We had to spread out and own all the land, or at least control all the land between the Atlantic and Pacific, all the North and South America. San Juan Hill was the most important battle of the Spanish-American War. And you need to know that a protectorate is a country that we guided. It wasn't a country that was really we controlled, but they didn't have complete control of themselves either. And you need to be able to tell me about the poem "The White Man's Burden," how it was received, and how it demonstrated our ideals and of the time period. You know that the people in these countries, like the Philippines, were savages, and we were there to help civilize them. And by taking them over, we're really doing a good thing, and how that led to a lot of imperialism in the United States towards South America, Central America, and in Asia and the Philippines. And if you study all of those, you should be great for your quiz on Friday.